Hey, happy Saturday. And then a little pause. Hey, have you ever had what you thought was a random encounter? And what I mean by that is let's say for example, you're going along and all of a sudden you feel like I need to go to this store or I need to go do this. And so you do. And when you're there, you just kind of randomly run into somebody. Maybe it's an old friend that you haven't seen for a while. Maybe it's a complete stranger that you didn't know. You have a conversation and you walk away going, wow, well, that was kind of random, right? Well, what if those random encounters are not actually random encounters, but instead are something that's actually divinely planned and not a coincidence at all? Well, I'm here to tell you that's usually what happens. Okay. We might like to kind of think that they're, just kind of random, but they're actually not. They're kind of close encounters of another kind, I like to say. If you throw in a little movie reference there, if you know what that movie reference is, put it what the title of that movie is, put it in the comments below. If you're here with me live too, hit me up with the comments so that I know that you're here and I can acknowledge you. And as we go through and I'm talking and sharing, if you have questions or comments about what I'm talking about, hit them up in the comments too, so we can kind of have a live conversation for those that are here live today. Okay, so random encounters aren't random. Okay. I think a lot of times in our life we think that these what seem to be random synchronicities are not random at all. And so I want to share an experience that I actually had yesterday in for the topic today. Okay, so I was here in my house. I was working, and all of a sudden, I knew that I had a couple of packages that were at the UPS store that had been delivered on Thursday and Friday, and so I knew I was going to wait until Friday to go get them anyway, most likely. But I was sitting here and working on some different things on Friday, and all of a sudden I felt this kind of prompting that I needed to go to the UPS store and pick up those packages, check my mail. So I got up, I left, drove over to the UPS store, got my packages, but actually, as I was driving over and kind of going into the parking lot of the shopping center where it is, um, there's another store in there too. And so as I pulled in, I'm like, park in the middle of the parking lot because you need to go into this. It's kind of like a consignment thrift shoppy kind of place, right? It has a lot of different random things. So every so often I'll feel like I need to go in there, just kind of walk around and see if there happens to be anything that jumps out at me. Um, and so that was the feeling that I had today, right? I didn't have that feeling when I left the house. The only thing I knew was, hey, go check your PO box, right? So I pulled in the middle of the parking lot, walked over, got my packages, put them in the car, walked into the store, and I kind of made my little loop around. I did it actually. Usually, I go in a counterclockwise way around the store. This time, I chose to go in a clockwise way. Why? I don't know. Just felt like that was what I was supposed to do. And so I get all the way around the store, and nothing really jumped out at me like that was anything that I needed to have. So I walked out of the store, and again, at that point, a lot of you might be like, oh my gosh, I didn't listen. I must have heard wrong because I didn't walk away with something from the store. And I've learned that that's not necessarily true, right? So when you get guidance like that, when you feel prompted to do certain things, just do them. You're going to understand later why you got that prompting. You're not going to probably know at that time, and it may be completely, absolutely different than what you thought it was when you got that prompting. So I walked out of the store, and it's like, oh well, nothing today, but there was some reason why I was supposed to be there. Okay. So I left and got back in my car with the intention of driving back home, right? So I get in the car, I go out onto the street to the stoplight where I can turn left to go back to my house. And I'm in the lane. There's like three turning lanes there, right? And so I'm kind of in the middle lane because I'm going left. And I'm sitting there because I get to the light and I have to wait for the light to kind of cycle through, right? All the different areas. So I'm sitting there for a little bit of time. And all of a sudden I kind of glance up and I felt like the shopping center across the street was looking at me. Okay. It wasn't like I saw, eyes looking at me, but I just felt like it was looking at me. And I'm like, that's curious. And then I'm like, hold it. That's the shopping center where this particular company is that sells some supplements that I take here in the area. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I better turn right and go in there and pick up some more of the supplements. So, another car comes by, I have to wait, get over, turn right, get back into the shopping center over there, and and go in to the area. Now, this place usually closes about 4 o'clock, but it's also a small business, so sometimes you never know. I think they're open usually until 4 o'clock, but you never know. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not there. But it was like, again, I felt like that's what I was supposed to do, so that's what I was going to do, right? So I go in there. It looks dark. Reach down the handle, open the door, and it was unlocked. Right. So I walk in, and as I walk in, it's kind of set up. There's like a reception area in the front and kind of a little seating area. And then there's offices and some other things in a corridor that goes into the back where they actually manufacture and package a lot of the products. And so it was the first time that I'd actually been inside the place, right? Because one of my friends had purchased supplements from there before that I'd started taking, and I just needed to go get some more. So I walk in, and there's these two gentlemen that are sitting in these chairs in kind of the reception area. And so, again, first time I'm in there, I don't really know. I just kind of walk in. I don't know who these guys are either, right? And so, I walk in and I'm like, trying to make a joke, and I'm like, so are you guys, just sitting here waiting, or are you sitting here working, or what's going on? Right. Kind of a thing. Ha 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 ha. Right. And kind of laugh with each other. And one of the guys looks at me, and all of a sudden he just looks at me and he goes, I think I know you. Do I know you? And I looked back at him and I said, because I felt this, right? When he said that, I felt it. And I'm like, this guy. And I'm like, we do know each other. He says, well, I know, but do we know each other from this life? And I'm like, probably not. Right? Like we haven't physically met yet, but we are right now for some reason. And so, we start talking. And I find out, who this gentleman is that asked me that. And it's actually kind of the founder of this company that I'd been told about, and found him to be a very interesting man from what I was told about him, was curious about him. He's an older man. And so we just start chatting a little bit for a few minutes. And then all of a sudden he looks up at me and he's like, would you like to sit down? And I'm like, well, yes, I would like to sit down. Right. So I sit down on the couch. So there's the three of us in this room, and we just start having this conversation. Right. And again, seems like a random conversation, right? I got a hit to go in there, buy some product. I walk in. Do you want to sit down? We start having a conversation. Right. And so we're talking. An hour or so goes by, and all of a sudden, the other man who's there was like, well, I need to get going. So, I'll give you a call later to talk about what else we were going to talk about. And so here I am kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of barging in here, but I wasn't barging in at the same point. Right. If you know what I mean. And so anyway, so he gets up and he leaves. And I continue to have this conversation with this man. His name is Joe. So I'll just use his name, Joe. So Joe and I just sit there and we continue to have a conversation. And another hour or so goes by, and all of a sudden he kind of looks over at me and picks up his chair and actually moves his chair closer to me. And we continue to have this conversation. Now I'm sitting on the couch where I can kind of see the windows. Okay. And as the other man left, Joe locked the door because it was after 4 o'clock. In fact, I think it was closer to 5 o'clock by that point. And sat down and we continued to talk. And so I was sitting in such a way that I could actually see the front door. I could see the windows, right? So again, imagine it's kind of a commercial office area. So it's pretty much the whole front wall is windows in the door, and it's all glass, so you can kind of see what's outside. And so as we're sitting there talking, all of a sudden I see this woman walk up to the storefront, and you can see her. She's kind of looking at the hours of operation, and kind of looks down at her watch, and kind of looks at the door, and then kind of comes up and tries to look in a little bit. It's one of those where it's harder to actually see in, right, because of the glare and everything else, to be able to see if anybody's there. And so I see her doing this, and I'm like, well, this is kind of interesting. And then all of a sudden I'm like, you're supposed to meet that woman. And I'm like, huh, well, that's kind of interesting. And then she walks away, right? And as she's walking away, I kind of get this sense like, go follow her. And I'm like, well, that's just kind of weird, right? Some random stranger just barges out of a storefront, and it's like, hey, just a minute, can I talk to you? So I just sat there, right? Joe and I continue having our conversation. And this conversation with him went to so many different places that are actually aligned with me, aligned with some things that I've been thinking about, actually kind of answered some different questions that I was actually having as well. And, I may or may not get into some of that stuff later. But anyway, so we're sitting there talking, and then all of a sudden I kind of glance up again, and this same woman comes back. And she's kind of looking around, and kind of goes up to the window and kind of peers in, and kind of turns around and starts to walk away again, and then just comes back and peers in again and just knocks on the door. And so Joe gets up, he goes over, unlocks the door, opens, because she's doing like this, I just need 1 minute. I just need 1 minute kind of a thing, right? So he opens the door to go see what it is that she needs. And they introduce themselves. She comes in, and almost right away, Joe's like, would you like to sit down? And she's like, yes. So sits down. She starts kind of asking the questions. And what's interesting is when she walked in the door, the first thing that she talked about was a particular person. And the funny thing is, Joe and I were literally talking about the same person the minute she came up and knocked on the door. Coincidence? I think not, right? Coincidence that this woman felt drawn to come into that space, felt drawn to come to this area. It was a place, she lives kind of in the area, but she had never been there before, didn't know this place existed. But as we were talking, I just felt like pulled almost into this storefront. Very interesting, right? And again, so I'm sitting there thinking, well, wow, I could have sat there and thought, well, this is kind of random. This is kind of weird. But I've gotten past that. It's like, why am I here? Why am I talking to Joe? Why did I talk to this other man? Why did this other woman come in here? What am I supposed to learn? What does this mean, right? I'm sitting here asking myself a lot of these kind of questions. And because I know that things like that are not random, right? So let me pause here for a minute, right? Is it's like, are you having those kinds of experiences? Are you allowing? Are you going with the flow? Are you seeing what most people would see as a random or kind of crazy thing happening as something that's just normal, that's magical, that's something that's pre-planned, if you will, to kind of put you together with the people that you're supposed to meet in your life and learn something from, maybe help each other heal, help each other learn, whatever it is, right? We don't know. And in fact, I still don't fully know why I walked in when I walked in and I met those three people, right? But I'm going to figure it out, right? I'm going to know when I know. And as I get hit with different, things around those people, I'm just going to kind of lean into it and see what it actually means, right? And so again, as we're sitting there, I had intended to just, run by, pick up a few things, be gone from my house for about 10 minutes, okay, because it's very close to where I live. Instead, here's the rest of the story, right? So time just keeps on ticking, 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 ticking. And, again, I could kind of see outside and I could see that all of a sudden it started getting dark and it got darker and it got darker. And all of a sudden, I kind of look at my watch and 5 or 6 hours have gone by. So I have sat there and talked to Joe for almost 6 hours without even realizing it. It was almost like I was in a time warp, right? Like that sure didn't seem like 6 hours. And during that same time, those other two people kind of came in and kind of went out. And so again, after the 6 hours, me and this lady are all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was this long. Got to go check on the dogs, take care of some of this stuff. Joe, it was great meeting you. We exchanged contact information in ways, so we can follow up. Because again, especially at the end, the three of us knew there is a bigger reason why all three of us met, right? I don't know what it is. Maybe that's all it was. Maybe it's more. But we have each other's contact information now as well, so that we can kind of go forward. So we end up leaving. But again, as me and this woman are leaving, we kind of look at each other and we're like, I don't think the conversation is over yet, is it? And she's like, no. And so we both went. I'm watching a friend's dog, and she had her dog in the car. So we went and took care of the animals because, like I said, it had been a lot longer than we had thought. So we attended to them, and then we continued our conversation, right? And to see where this was going, what we were supposed to learn from each other or know, from each other. And it continued until 3 a.m., right? That we continued to talk. And then all of a sudden, again, it was like, holy shit, it's 3 a.m. We better go home, right? And so why am I coming on here and talking about this? These things are starting to happen to me more and more in my life. And in fact, they've been happening to me my whole life. I just haven't been as conscious or aware that these things are happening. When these kind of things would happen, I'd be like, whoa, that's kind of weird. That's kind of random, right? So where are you at on this, right? Are you in that area where you're like, whoa, this is kind of random? Or are you leaning into, hey, it's not random. There's probably something here that I need to learn about. And you just need to kind of follow those little nudges that you're getting and kind of be in the present moment and learn what it is that you need to learn, right? So anyway, I'm going to kind of wrap up for today because I know it's a Saturday and I got a couple other things I've got to do today. It's still a work day for me. But, if you're here, hit me up in the comments. Has this been helpful? Where are you at on this too, right? Do you have these random encounters? Do you still see them as random encounters, or do you see them as something more than that, right? And if you've had some of these kind of random things, share a little bit in the comments too, right? Because I think it's always helpful as I'm learning, as I'm growing, as I'm evolving, sometimes it seems like we're a little crazy, right? And I know this is what one of the things I talked to this woman about is it's almost like we were in a warp, right? This was kind of a warped thing. It's kind of different, to explain this to other people, they probably wouldn't even understand, but we're kind of getting it because we're starting to experience these things more and more, right? And so what might appear to be crazy to some other people is absolutely not crazy. So if you're one of those people too that you're like, I'm experiencing these kind of things, and I think I'm the only one. I think I'm weird. Nobody else is feeling like this. Well, hey, that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing, right? If you're one of those kind of people, start sharing too, right? So that and you can help other people realize it's not random, it's not weird, it's actually synchronicities, right, of the universe that are helping you to get to where you need to be. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for today. My beard is coming in. It looks like I need to go shave. So, all right, everybody, have a great Saturday, and I'll see you on the next live.